Look down at your wrists. There is no iron there. Look at your ankles. There are no shackles. You can walk out of your door right now, turn left or right, and go wherever you please. You can choose what to eat, what to wear, and what to say. We are the architects of our own destiny, the sovereign rulers of our modern lives. Or, at least, that is the prevailing narrative. That is the script we are handed the moment we are capable of understanding words. But what if the chains were simply refined? What if over centuries the iron was replaced by paper, by debt, by social conditioning, and by an invisible architecture of control so absolute that we defend it as our own freedom? Today, we are going to explore a very uncomfortable question. Are we slaves? In this series, we will dissect the reality of the human condition. Today, we focus on the mechanism of work, consumption, and the historical blueprint of human subjugation. We will trace how power evolved from the brutal force of ancient kings to the silent, inescapable economic mandates of today. Because to understand our present, we must confront the fundamental truth. You are not born free. You are born into a system that requires you pay for the simple privilege of existing. To understand the invisible cage of the modern world, we must first look at how the bars were forged. Throughout human history, one constant remains. The vast majority of human beings have been subjugated by a tiny minority. And the most fascinating part, that minority rarely possessed a legitimate natural title to rule. Historically, power was established through one primary mechanism: a raw, unadulterated violence. A warlord, a king, or an emperor claimed a piece of the earth by spilling blood over it. But violence is an expensive and exhausting way to maintain control. You cannot hold a sword to everyone's throat forever. So early rulers realized they needed a system that internalized the control. They needed the oppressed to accept their subjugation not as a tragedy, but as the natural order of the universe. Enter the institution of early religion and the church. Historically, religious institution often partnered with the ruling class to provide something swords could not: divine justification. The monarch was no longer just a man with the biggest army. He was God's appointed representative on earth. To rebel against the king was not merely treason, it was a cosmic sin. This was the first great psychological chain. The populace was taught that obedience was a virtue. You suffer in this life, you work the fields, you give a portion of your harvest to the crown and the clergy, and your reward will come after you die. Wars were fought, borders were drawn, and empires rose and fell, but the structures remained identical. The peasant was always the peasant. As centuries progressed, the justification shifted. We moved from the divine right of kings to the sophisticated legal and economic framework of feudalism, and eventually to the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. The aesthetic of the world changed. The pitchfork became a wrench. The field became a factory. But the underlying paradigm, it survived completely intact. You are born, you obey a ruling authority, you labor for their enrichment, and you die. Let's examine the modern script. the cycle of life as we know it today, birth, education, work, and death, we call it growing up. But in reality, it is an extensive, multi-decade process of conditioning. Think about the modern educational system. Its roots trace back to the Prussian model of the 19th century. The goal of the system was never to create free-thinking philosophers or highly individualized creators. The goal was produce punctual, obedient soldiers and factory workers. You are taught from age 6 to sit in neat rows, to speak only when spoken to obey the ringing of bell, to accept that knowledge is divided into discrete, easily measurable tasks. You are evaluated, graded, and ranked against your peers. By the time you graduate, you are perfectly primed for the next phase of the script, work. We are taught that adulthood means securing a job, taking on a mortgage, and eventually having children to perpetuate the cycle. This is the script, and it's incredibly rigid. What happens when someone dares to step outside of it? What happens when an individual says, I do not wish to spend 40 hours a week in office? I do not want a mortgage. I want to exist, create, and live. Society instantly pathologizes them. They are branded as lazy, eccentric, or failures. The system suppresses outliers because the outlier is a dangerous precedent. If one person proves that the script is optional, the entire architecture of control is threatened. We are pushed into a singular definition of truth. The prevailing narrative demands that you succeed within the parameter they have set. You must accumulate wealth. You must climb the hierarchy. You must destroy the competition. This brings us to a profound philosophical realization. We do not have the time to actually live our lives. True living requires stillness. It requires observation, deep connection, and the freedom to explore the human condition without the looming anxiety of survival. But the system occupies all your waking hours. You are kept perpetually busy, perpetually tired, and perpetually anxious. We must talk about the ultimate instrument of modern subjugation, money. In the modern world, money is not merely a medium of exchange, it is the permission slip to exist. You cannot simply walk into forest, build a cabin, and live off the land. The land is owned. The state demands property taxes. To drink clear water, to have shelter, to consume calories, you must pay. Because existence requires capital, you are forced to sell the only finite, irreplaceable resource you possess, your time. This is the brilliant evolution of control. Modern power structures do not need to force you to work with a whip. They simply enclose all the resources required for survival, put a price tag on them, and let the biological necessity of hunger do the rest. But the system demands more than just survival. It demands growth. And so we arrive at the trap of consumption. We are culturally indoctrinated to identify ourselves with our work and our possessions. The question, what do you do, is the most common social greeting. We have conflated our economic utility with our human value. The ethos of the modern era is deeply corrosive. Don't sleep, work, hustle, grind. We are taught to be proud of our exhaustion. We brag about our lack of sleep as if it's a badge of honor rather than symptom of exploitation. We are encouraged to view our fellow human beings not as brothers and sisters in the struggle of life, but as competition to be outmaneuvered. And why do we work so hard? To buy things we do not need, to impress people we do not know? The mortgage, the car loan, the credit card debt. These are the modern equivalents of the iron shackle. Debt keeps you complained. A man with a 30-year mortgage and children to feed does not riot. He does not strike. He sets his alarm clock for 6 a.m. and goes to work, no matter how deeply he despises it. We are trapped in a hedonic treadmill running endlessly toward an artificial horizon of happiness that recedes with every step we take. If this system is so exhausting, why do we not collectively dismantle it? Why do we tolerate a world where the many toil endlessly to secure the exorbitant wealth and power of the few? The answer lies in the oldest trick in the Book of Power: divide and conquer. The us versus them paradigm. The ruling frameworks of our world, whether they be political, corporate, or ideological, survive by keeping the populace entirely distracted. We are given an endless supply of enemies to hate. Sometimes the enemy is a neighboring country, leading the devastating, senseless meat grinders of war. Wars where the working class of one nation slaughters the working class of another entirely for the benefit of rulers who sit safely in comfortable rooms hundreds of miles away. Other time, the enemy is closer to home. We are divided by political parties, by cultural wedge issues, by race, by ideology. We fight bitterly over the scraps left on the table, blaming our neighbors for our mutual misery, while the architecture of the table itself goes unquestioned. As long as we're fighting a horizontal war against our fellow citizens, we'll never look vertically at the structures of power that orchestrate the conflict. We defend the one truth of our chosen tribe. We become fiercely loyal to ideologies that, at their core, demand our continued servitude. We participate enthusiastically in our own policing. Take a breath. Think about your tomorrow. Think about the script you will follow, the alarm, the commune, the tasks, the exhaustion. Are you living? Or are you simply maintaining the machinery of a world that does not love you back? To ask the question, are we slaves, is not to disrespect the horrific, literal chains of historical chattel slavery. It is rather to demand a deeply honest assessment of our current reality. We are born into a world where our fundamental right to exist is held behind a paywall. We are directed into a pipeline of standardized education, pushed into a lifetime of specialized labor, anchored by debt, and kept docile by endless consumerism and manufactured conflicts. We are not expected to live, we are expected to function, but recognizing the invisible architecture of this system is the first necessary step toward reclaiming the human spirit. You cannot escape a prison until you realize you are inside one. In upcoming episodes, we will take a closer look at other mechanisms that keeps us trapped in the system, and in the future we can also discuss how to finally free ourselves. In the subsequent parts of this podcast, I will guide you toward further profound, life-altering questions. What does a meaningful life look like when we refuse to follow the script? Until then, look closely at the walls around you. Question the routine. And remember, your time, your mind, and your life belong to you. Do not sell them cheaply. Thank you for listening.